Hey guys, how's it going? My name's Philip and this is my wood shop. Today I'm just going to do a quick video kind of showing you my sled. I've had several people ask about the sled, how it's constructed, and if there's anything that I thought was important to share. Pretty much it's a very basic sled, but I'm going to go ahead and show you some features on it that I find helpful in my shop. So as you can see, the sled is made up out of 1/2-inch Baltic birch as the substrate, and then I have some 1/4-inch, or I think it's about 3/32 plywood on top. Now the reason I'm using this particular plywood, it was free. It was given to me. If I had to go buy some, I probably would use some 1/4-inch MDF. The thing that was important to me is to have the different inserts. So if I want to use a dado set, or if I want to do a 45, I can change those out. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that now, and kind of also talk about fence alignment and how I adjust my fence. So yeah, here we go. So like I mentioned, I have a nice insert here. So that's the reason for this top skin, this 3/32 plywood. So anytime I need to change it out, I just unscrew it. Now I would point out, if you do this, you need to make sure, especially if you're doing a dado stack in here, or if you're going to tilt your blade at a 45, depending which way your blade tilts. Mine tilts to the right. You need to accommodate for that. So make sure the screws are not going to be in the way of hitting that blade. As you can see back here, I luckily caught that before that happened, but I put a screw down there. And just before I made the cut, I realized I was going to hit it. So it also has this back piece. This is 1/2-inch on top of this birch fence that can come in and out, especially when you're doing dados, changing those dado widths to prevent blowout on the back. Now the inserts just simply drop in, and I'll put these to the side. So this insert was designed for an 1/8-inch blade. Any insert you do, you have that nice zero clearance, and after a while it's going to end up getting kind of waddled out, so it's nice to be able to change that. So I usually make a stack of these at any given time. I've got 4 here. I usually make about 6 at a time. I've indicated, when I make the first one, I basically use it as the template, and I indicate on here towards the fence. And so this guy just goes together, and I also put a little arrow, so that way when I split it apart, it's pretty easy to remember which way it goes back together. It should be pretty self-explanatory because of where the screws are, but less thinking the better, at least in my case. And I'll just push it back towards the fence. It's a nice snug fit, and go ahead and screw it back down. I've done inserts before, but I found that it's really more of a headache. So this insert's going to be for 45 that I'm needing to cut. I'm going to do some miter foil boxes, nightstands, I guess. So that's that. Usually I'll tilt my blade and then raise it up through the plywood itself. I'll do that in a minute. But now let's talk about the stop system I have. The stop system I have is pretty basic. I've got some of this T-track that's running in the fence itself. On the fence too, on the face of it, a little while back I decided that I was going to just face it with some 1/2-inch MDF. I usually get the MDF and I'll send it all through my drum sander, get them all consistent. From one sheet to another, I've noticed that it can be different, and this wouldn't be flush. And then, just a couple of sliding stops. So I don't always use these. A lot of times I'll just have a piece of wood and I'll just clamp it down. I find these type clamps, this is just one example, but dovetail clamp by Micro Jig works great to clamp down the stop. And then I have this guy, so it slides on. It's got the little T-ball. Slides on, and just tying it down. The nice thing about this, it has a little screw in it, so I use this guy a lot of times when I'm doing tenons. and then just got a straight forward one for anything else. Now, this is the size of the fence, and then I add on chunks like you can see up here. Real simple, nothing fancy about it. We use some scrap pieces of plywood and just screw it on from behind so I can extend that fence out. And then take this off when I don't need it. So pretty straightforward. So yeah, so that's pretty much how the stop system works. I'm gonna go ahead now. I'm gonna raise my blade up through here, and then I'll go ahead and take this guy off, flip it over, and show you how I set up the back fence to the sled. So I've already tilted my blade to 45, and now I'm just gonna raise it up. So now that's going to give me a nice crisp, clean cut, no blowout. Works, just works really well. So, I had to back up through the cut. Just take your time when you do that. But now I'm going to just flip this over, and I'll show you how it works from underneath. As you can see, it's pretty scuffed up. I've had this one for probably close to 7 years, if not longer. And what I've found, I've built a lot of sleds. Being a lab tech for a woodworking school, I've had to build a bunch of sleds. And what I found was when I started out, I made them pretty fancy, pretty elaborate, with all kind of nice features. And inevitably, they get screwed up, especially in a teaching environment. So for me, I needed to be able to take the sled every semester and tune it up easily to where it's kind of square, because at the end of the day, that's what's important. So I've kind of just stuck with that, just keep it simple. Now these guides, I think they're made by Craig, and I like them. I've used ones from Anchor and all over the place. I like these because you screw it from underneath. You don't have to have the hole from above to make any adjustment. And the way I usually do this, and when I need to make a new sled, I'll make a video how I line this up. But I usually basically put these in to the slots. I adjust these little nylon inserts, get them running just right inside the table saw slots, and then I will put double stick tape on it. Obviously this be the other way. Double stick tape, shim the underside up so it's just level or just above the surface of the table saw, and then I use my fence to basically drop this down on top of. Now, it may not be dead square, but that's okay. I've never had it where it's more than a 30-second out of square, but I make the adjustments at the fence. So, using a sled a lot, this thing's pretty big. You can bump it about. In my shop, I know for the most part I can grab this sled and go. It's going to be square because it's just me using it. But like I said, in a teaching environment or in a shop where you have multiple people using it, all it takes is one good hit on the fence and it's going to be out of square. That being said, I keep away from gluing the fence on for that reason. You can still knock that fence out of square, but now you don't have an easy way to adjust it. I also like the fence not being screwed on because every now and then things kind of get out of whack. And I'll take that fence off and run it across the joiner and get it trued up again. So the way I attach this is pretty simple. So inside the fence, and if you can use some, quarter sawn material, that's, better because it's not going to move as much. It's nice and stable. You can also do like a plywood lamination, maybe use your joiner outfeed table to kind of glue that up so it comes out nice and straight. I wouldn't want to run the plywood across my joiner. But the way it's attached is I have this 1/4-20 insert. This is brass. You can get the steel ones. They don't strip out as easy into the actual fence. And then I have a 3/8 hole drilled in here with a 5/8 inch countersink. So the washer goes in, and then a 1/4-20 bolt that goes in. Now the nice thing about this, the washer is about a 1/16 bigger. It's about 5/16 OD to where this is a 1/4 inch OD and this is 5/16 ID. Sorry. So it has a 1/16 wiggle room. Now once those go in, I go ahead, I put them in. There's 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Lock it down. Make a cut with a piece of plywood. Do the whole 5 cut test, or I have basically a simpler method, but anyway, check that it's square. If it needs any adjustment, I can easily just leave, you know, one of these tight, loosen up the other 3, knock it in or out, depending on what needs to be done, and then tighten it down. Now this thing, you know, these really clamp it down, so it's not like it's going to move on me much. If you wanted, you could come in and pin it with some screws once you have it adjusted. It's just a really easy, simple way to do it, and I find that it works really well. So yeah, that's basically it. I hope you found this video of some use. Hope there's some helpful tips in here, and my advice really is to just keep it basic. At the end of the day, the most important thing about the sled is that you can cut a true 90 degree.